Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. Alhamdulillahi Rabbil Alameen. Wassalatu wassalam ala Sayyidina Muhammad wa ala alihi wa sahbihi ajma'in. Assalamu alaikum, brothers and sisters. Good afternoon. This is Edward Ahmed Mitchell, the Deputy Director of the Council on American Islamic Relations. I hope all of you are doing well and staying safe. I want to welcome you to today's episode of CAIR on Air. Thank you so much for joining us. A special thank you to our listeners on American Muslim 360. We greatly appreciate it. If you have any questions during the program or any comments, feel free to post them on Facebook in the comments, and inshallah, we'll try to address them there. Today, inshallah, the main focus of our program will be an incident that recently occurred in Maryland that CAIR's Maryland office is leading the effort to respond to. And before I get to that, I want to note that alhamdulillah, CAIR has also been working to address an issue that you may have heard about, which is that Hilton Hotels is currently scheduled to build or allow the construction of a hotel with their name on it on the site of a demolished mosque in the Xinjiang province of China, where a genocide of Uyghur Muslims is occurring at the hands of the Chinese Communist Party. CAIR obviously has called for Hilton to cancel this project, and we're calling for all American corporations to stop doing business in the Xinjiang province. It is simply morally unacceptable for an American corporation to be doing business down the street from a concentration camp, much less on the site of a demolished house of worship. We're actively working to address that issue right now behind the scenes, and we might be taking some more public steps soon. Inshallah, we'll keep the community updated on that as we work on it. Now, with that, I want to move to the next topic, which is the focus of today's program, that incident in Maryland. And I want to bring on right now the director of our Maryland Outreach Office, Zainab Chaudry, to discuss that incident. Let's bring on Zainab. Assalamu alaikum, Zainab. How are you?
Walaikum assalam, Edward. I'm doing well, alhamdulillah. How are you doing?
I'm good, alhamdulillah. Good. No complaints. Thank you so much for joining us. We appreciate it.
Of course.
Yes. So, Zainab, let's get into this. So, I remember over the weekend, I believe it was last weekend, you reached out to CAIR National, the rest of the leadership there, and let us know about this disturbing incident. Let's just start at the beginning. What happened over the weekend?
Of course. So CAIR received a phone call from a family based in Montgomery County, Maryland, about an incident that occurred on Friday morning, early Friday morning, where 5 members of the family had planned a day trip to Shenandoah. They were going to pick up a friend from Harford County, and they were returning from there to make the trip to Shenandoah for what was supposed to be a family outing, just to enjoy, the day. Unfortunately, this turned into a nightmare sequence of events where the family is left struggling to understand why they are dealing with this trauma of not only sustaining physical damage to their car, but also the mental and emotional trauma that goes along with being involved in this kind of an incident. So in this car were 5 members of the family, 4 females who wear the Islamic headscarf, the hijab, and 1 male member of the family. And they had pulled over to the side of the road on the emergency lane on the highway on I-95 because the driver, she wanted to get a bottle of water from the car. So they had stopped safely. They had pulled over into the emergency lane. They were well over the yellow line. We've seen the photographs that document exactly how much distance there was between the car and the yellow line, which delineates obviously where the traffic lane begins. And so she had gotten out of the car, and the female passenger who was on the passenger side of the car, she also opened her car door, and she noticed that there was a vehicle barreling down the highway in their direction. Now, she tells CAIR that she made eye contact with the driver, and it almost appeared as if the driver was speeding up instead of slowing down. And she fortunately was able to ascertain that the driver was going to strike their vehicle. She quickly jumped out of the way, and seconds later, the vehicle struck their car, basically totaled the passenger side of the car, almost nearly ripped the passenger side door off the hinges. And then, shockingly, the driver kept on going. In this kind of a situation, when you have an accident happen and the perpetrators flee the scene of the accident, that's a crime. That's illegal. They're required by law to stop. Fortunately, there was a state trooper who was nearby who happened to witness the accident and happened to witness the driver who continued to keep going on the highway. So they gave chase. They pursued the vehicle about a quarter mile down the freeway. They were able to apprehend the driver. forced him to reverse. According to the family tells CAIR that when the driver who struck their car reached them to where they were on the freeway, he did not express any remorse. In fact, he allegedly asked for a lighter, which was a very kind of it caught the family off guard. They were, obviously in shock because of the incident, and one member of the family nearly losing her life, and then having to hear that the first, kind of comment allegedly from the driver who struck them was, for a lighter, was deeply disturbing. So the family has reached out to CAIR. The state trooper's response, unfortunately, was not satisfactory. We are working to get justice for the family. We want to make sure that they feel like their voice has been heard, that their concerns have been addressed, and that the public receives a message that when something like this happens, there are consequences for continuing to move forward and drive down without stopping to check to even see if the family was okay after they've been struck. One of the concerns that CAIR has is whether or not bias played a motive. Obviously, as I mentioned earlier, 4 members of the family were hijab. And so we're calling on the state police to conduct a thorough investigation and bring justice for the family.
Absolutely. Thank you for that summary, Zainab. So, there are so many things we could highlight and break down from that story. Let's put the picture on screen and keep it there for a few moments while we talk about this. So, number one, when I look at this, clearly they're over the line. They're in the correct place, where they should be. Number two, I can see the visibly hijabi woman there. Number three, the thing that's really concerning, accidents happen, right? It's perfectly possible that someone, got distracted while driving, veered over. It's possible. But the fact that, number one, one of the passengers noticed he seemed to be speeding up and made eye contact. Number two, the fact that he kept driving away, that he didn't stop after the incident, that he kept driving. The police had to go track him down and bring him back. That is very concerning. Then you add on top of that the lack of remorse. It's very concerning. Now, we can't say, Zainab, that this is a hate crime. We don't know. But this is something the police need to look into, especially after the horrific incident in Canada a few weeks ago where a man driving a car saw a Muslim family and just barreled over and struck them. That seemed crazy too. The idea that someone would just, suddenly go out and be able to attack a Muslim family that just happened to, be out for a walk, mashallah, but that happened. So it needs to be looked into. Now, Zainab, am I correct understanding that the family was disappointed with how the officer handled this, that the family wasn't even, number one, the guy was in charge of the hit and run, but the family wasn't even told whether or not he had received any citations at the scene of the incident, correct? It was only later they found out that he gotten a ticket for how he was driving. Is that correct?
That's correct. The family was very disturbed by the way that it almost appeared as if the state trooper allegedly was trying to excuse or justify the person who hit the driver who hit their car, and almost made it seem as if the drivers whose car was struck was at fault. One of the kind of excuses that the family was told allegedly is that there was a glare from the sun. As you can tell from the photo, clearly the sun is behind the car. It's not an issue. I spoke with the family. They said that they were facing the same direction as the vehicle that struck them. There was no sun glare. That was not a concern. But the fact that the state trooper almost seemed to be using that as an excuse to let the driver who struck them off the hook was deeply concerning. And also, I think one of the other kind of key points that we want to make here is that, as you mentioned earlier, Edward, when these kind of situations happen, like when you flee the scene of an accident, that's not excusable. And the 4 traffic violations that have been citations that have been given to the driver, CAIR did a case search, and we realized that they were actually filed, I believe, after we put out our initial release. So they were not given at the time of the accident. It was only after CAIR got involved, to my knowledge, that at that point those cases were opened up and those charges were filed. So we're still not satisfied with the fact that we have not been able to obtain any kind of video evidence. We're calling for the state police to release dash cam footage, any kind of surveillance footage that could help ascertain the sequence of events that happened that Friday morning. And we want to make sure that, especially in this particular situation, because the passenger and the driver were visibly Muslim, both wear the hijab, the headscarf, that bias is not a motive. For the driver who struck the vehicle to be so lackadaisical to not express any remorse is not acceptable. And so that's our concern right now. CAIR has worked with the family. The family has filed a FOIA request. We are waiting to hear back from the Maryland State Police on the status of the video that hopefully will be released soon.
Right. And for our viewers, I mean, I know a FOIA request is a Freedom of Information Act request. So the idea is that the government has to, in many cases, turn over, the materials they have, emails and sometimes video and other such things, depending on the local law. And so the hope is that the officer who was there on scene and saw this attempted hit and run, that his dash cam hopefully caught video footage of the incident, and then we can see for ourselves what happened, right? And then it could be, if this guy really did turn into the family, hopefully that is clear on the video. And if not, then hopefully that's clear as well. And in addition, the officer's body cam footage and other things might show what happened after the accident, right? After the incident, after he had to go track the driver down, the driver's attitude, his remarks, and other such things. And so these are all things that just need to be looked into, right? You cannot just let an incident like this occur and then just assume accident. Mm-hmm. You need to look into it and make sure it wasn't something more. And all of us committing, they need to charge with committing a hit and run. I'm a former prosecutor. I've never heard of someone crashing into a vehicle on the highway and then driving away and an officer having to track them down and bring them back, and that person not going to jail for a hit and run violation, or at least getting a ticket for it. It's very odd. And so that's another question that needs to be answered, is why the hit and run charge was not leveled. This isn't about punishment and being punitive, but it's about treating everyone fairly, right? If you would have given a hit and run citation to someone else that needs to be given in this case, where there was a Muslim victim, but also, he has to be held accountable for what he did. He crashed into someone's car, nearly killed someone, and then kept driving. And so, we need answers to these questions. So Zainab, let me ask you this. How's the family, doing? I'm sure I'm sure they're grateful that they're safe, physically safe, but I'm sure it was a traumatic incident for them, especially in light of current events. How are they doing?
Of course. So I spoke with the father a couple days ago, and we've been in touch with them. They obviously are very deeply concerned about the incident. They want to get justice for the family. The father, his number one priority is to make sure that this doesn't happen again, that this driver does not go back onto the roads thinking that he can get away with committing a crime like this and not stopping without any kind of consequences. So they're grateful to CAIR as well for the support that we are providing. There has been some media coverage on this issue, on this case as well. So we're hoping that will also help raise awareness, as you mentioned earlier, Edward, obviously in the aftermath of the London, Ontario hate crime. This is something that's on a lot of Muslim families' minds, especially visibly Muslim families. Like when you go out into the public, like you want to feel safe and secure. You want your loved ones to feel safe and secure. So there's a physical kind of component to this. Obviously, when the vehicle was struck, even though nobody died, there is still, injuries that can happen from this kind of an accident. So the family is recovering from that, but then there's also the mental and the emotional, psychosocial impact of this kind of an incident. And so we are providing as much support as we can. We want to make sure that the Maryland State Police are doing their due diligence to not just, brush this under the rug, that they are conducting a thorough and transparent investigation. The hook with just like a slap on the wrist, because there need to be consequences for this kind of a attack, or not attack, but this kind of a incident. So our hope is that we can continue to provide that support and put their minds at ease as much as possible, even as obviously moving forward, it's going to be a struggle for the family to feel safe going out on the road again.
Yeah, absolutely. Inshallah. I mean, look, I hope it was an accident. I hope this man wasn't wasn't an evil person who was trying to hurt someone, but we need to know whether it was an accident. And that's what an investigation is for. And in the meantime, we're glad that Zainab, you're assisting the family and doing this great and important work in Maryland. It's important people have a voice, right? If it was just the family by themselves, who knows if the police would take it as seriously. And so, alhamdulillah, we're glad you're there. We're glad CAIR is there doing that work in Maryland. Now, Zainab, let me ask you about
the national office, Edward. I think it's really important to also kind of mention the fact that the national office has been so involved and so supportive in this, because we do this work together, and that's really sort of what helps us be more effective. So thank you to our government affairs department, our communications department, who have also stepped in and to make sure that we're doing all that we can to support this family.
Yes, absolutely. Alhamdulillah. So Zainab, let me ask you something else before we let you go. Alhamdulillah, and not only incidents like this you're dealing with, but you're also, trying to make forward progress on positive changes and reforms in Maryland. Tell us about an incident you recently held with the NAACP in the area.
Of course. Last week, CAIR partnered with several organizations, including the NAACP Maryland State Conference, the United Black Clergy, Caucus of African American Leaders, March on Maryland. We held a news conference in Annapolis at Lawyers Mall, calling for justice for teens who were impacted by excessive use of force by Ocean City Police. Earlier that weekend, so I guess it would be about 2 weeks ago, there were a group of teens who were vaping on the boardwalk in Ocean City, and there was a video that went viral showing one of the teens being tasered, the other teen being kicked or kneed like in their rib area, almost falling unconscious. And just the level of brutality and force that was used in that video, especially considering the teen had been already apprehended. He was subdued by the officers who were involved in that incident, was deeply alarming and deeply disturbing. I mean, especially post George Floyd era, as we've seen, a racial reckoning sweeping across the country. There's been more and more attention on this issue, making sure that there's transparency and accountability from law enforcement in the way that they interact with, especially members of communities of color who have historically disproportionately been impacted by excessive use of force. Last Maryland General Assembly session, there were numerous police reform bills that CAIR also testified on, along with different coalition partners, to try to make sure that we can legislate change. But it's not enough to legislate change in the halls of power. We need to see the impact of these changes in the streets as well. Otherwise, it's just symbolic, it's useless. So we are calling for specific reforms. We're calling for an investigation into that incident. We are supporting the NAACP Maryland State Conference's demands to make sure that the officers who were involved in that incident are held accountable, and that those teens who were impacted by that situation are able to receive the resources and the support that they need.
I'm glad to hear that you and other organizations are on that issue. Very glad to hear. So Zainab, we really appreciate you for coming on. Thank you for sharing information about this. Keep us updated. We'll try to update the community if we get a hold of that dash cam video, learn anything else about the incident that occurred in Maryland. And as always, I think we encourage everyone, stay safe, be vigilant, don't be afraid, but be vigilant, be safe, right? That's what we do. We're balanced. We're not carefree and indifferent to the threats in the society, but we're also, inshallah, not cowed by them, not walking around on eggshells. We are confident and vigilant at the same time.
Absolutely. And report to CAIR if there is something that happens, or if you observe something, or if you know someone who's experienced a situation, please report it to CAIR so we can, at the very least, track these incidents and their prevalence, but also hopefully intervene on behalf of the family or the individuals impacted and provide support and make sure that they get justice.
Yeah, absolutely, inshallah. Thank you so much, Zainab. We greatly appreciate it. We'll talk to you soon, inshallah. Assalamu alaikum. And all of you, thank you so much for joining us for today's episode of CAIR On Air. We appreciate your presence. If you have a topic you'd like to see us address, just email us at info@cair.com or post it in the comments on Facebook after the program, and inshallah, we'll see about addressing that topic. Make dua for all your brothers and sisters around the world who are suffering oppression, and make dua for all people suffering oppression. May Allah grant them relief and guidance, and may Allah guide us to be people who are just and advance justice here and around the world. Inshallah, we will see you next Tuesday for the next episode of CAIR On Air. Until then, assalamu alaikum. May peace be upon you.